The confidence calibration method. True confidence isn't about feeling sure of everything. It's about being comfortable with uncertainty while still taking action. Most people confuse confidence with certainty, which leads to either paralysis when they don't know everything, or overconfidence when they think they do. Real confidence comes from calibrating your certainty to match the actual evidence you have. When you're 70% sure about something, express 70% confidence, not 90% or 50%. This honest calibration makes you more trustworthy because people can rely on your assessments. When you say you're certain about something, they know you really are. When you express doubt, they know it's warranted. This approach also gives you permission to act on incomplete information, which is essential in most real-world situations. You don't need 100% certainty to make good decisions. You just need to know how certain you are and factor that uncertainty into your planning. The hand-object power move. Your brain connects holding something with authority and purpose. When you walk into any room carrying a clipboard, folder, or even just a pen, people automatically assume you belong there and have important business. Security guards let you pass without question. Receptionists answer your questions faster and more thoroughly. Colleagues take you more seriously in meetings. This works because humans evolved to associate tools with competence and status over millions of years. The object doesn't need to be expensive or fancy. A simple notebook works just as well as a leather portfolio. The key is carrying it with confidence, like it contains something vital to your mission. This trick works in offices, hotels, hospitals, construction sites, and almost any institutional setting. Your empty hands signal you're just wandering around aimlessly. But something in your grip signals clear intention and belonging. The effect is so strong that people will even move out of your way in crowded hallways when you're carrying something and walking with purpose. The yes ladder. Want someone to agree to your big request? Start small. When you ask someone for a tiny favor first, their brain creates a mental pattern of saying yes to you. This works because humans hate being inconsistent with their previous actions. Once they say yes once, they want to keep being the helpful person who says yes. The magic happens in your brain's consistency center. Every time someone agrees to help you, their mind creates a small story about being helpful. They start thinking of themselves as the kind of person who helps you. Breaking this pattern would create mental stress called cognitive dissonance, so they keep saying yes to avoid that uncomfortable feeling. Try this at work when you need help with a project. First, ask a coworker to check one small email for you. After they do it, wait a few minutes, then ask them to review a short document. Finally, make your real request for help with the bigger task. Each yes makes the next yes easier. Your brain literally rewires itself to be consistent with past decisions. The key is making each request slightly bigger than the last one, but not so big that it feels like a completely different favor. This technique works in relationships, sales, parenting, and even with yourself. Want to start exercising? Start with putting on workout clothes, then walk to the front door, then step outside. Before you know it, you are taking a full walk, because each small yes led to the next one. Smile first, feel later. Your facial muscles are connected directly to your emotional brain centers. When you force a smile, even a fake one, your brain receives signals that you must be happy. This triggers the release of dopamine and serotonin, the same chemicals that make you feel good naturally. The connection between your face and your feelings is so strong that people who get certain types of face surgery report changes in their emotions. When you cannot frown as easily, you actually feel less sad. When you smile more, happiness becomes your default state. Hold a pen between your teeth without letting your lips touch it. This forces your face into a smile position without you even thinking about smiling. Within 30 seconds, you will start to feel lighter and more positive. This works because your facial feedback system is always active. Your brain constantly monitors your face to understand what emotion you should be experiencing. The best part is that smiling is contagious. When other people see you smile, mirror neurons in their brain automatically make them want to smile back. This creates a positive feedback loop where your fake smile becomes real happiness for both you and everyone around you. You can use this before phone calls too. The other person cannot see your face, but they can hear the smile in your voice. Customer service representatives are often trained to smile while talking on the phone because it actually changes how their voice sounds. The 5-to-1 ratio rule. Every relationship runs on an invisible emotional bank account, and most people are accidentally bankrupting themselves. For every one negative interaction, criticism, or complaint you make, you need 5 positive interactions to keep the relationship balanced. This isn't just relationship advice, it's mathematical psychology. Researchers tracked thousands of conversations and found this exact ratio separates thriving relationships from failing ones. One harsh word erases 5 compliments in the other person's mind. One moment of irritation cancels out 5 acts of kindness. This works because negative experiences hit the brain 3 to 5 times harder than positive ones. It's an ancient survival mechanism. Your ancestors needed to remember threats more than pleasant moments to stay alive. So when you criticize someone's work, you need to find 5 things to genuinely praise about them before their brain feels safe and valued again. When you complain about something they did, you need 5 positive comments to restore the balance. Most people do the opposite. They give 1 compliment for every 5 criticisms, and then wonder why their relationships feel strained and distant. The broken record defense. When someone is trying to pressure you into something you don't want to do, the most effective response is to repeat the same simple phrase over and over, like a broken record. Don't elaborate, don't justify, don't explain your reasoning. Just keep saying, "That doesn't work for me," or "I'm not interested," in the same calm tone. This technique works because persistent people are trained to overcome objections by finding new angles and arguments. When you give them detailed reasons for saying no, you're actually giving them ammunition to argue with. But when you give them nothing to work with except a simple, repeated boundary, their persuasion tactics become useless. The broken record technique also prevents you from getting drawn into lengthy debates about your decision. You don't owe anyone a detailed explanation for your choices, especially when they're trying to manipulate you into changing your mind. The key is to stay calm and pleasant while being absolutely unmovable. Eventually, they'll realize that pushing further is pointless and will move on to an easier target. Frame it as a choice. When you want someone to do something, never make it sound like an order. Instead, give them 2 options, where both choices lead to what you want. This works because humans have a deep need to feel in control of their decisions. When you offer choices, their brain focuses on picking between the options, instead of questioning whether they want to do the task at all. The secret is in how you structure the options. Instead of asking, "Can you help me move this weekend?" try, "Would you prefer to help me move Saturday morning or Sunday afternoon?" Both options involve helping you move, but now the person feels like they have control over the situation. Their brain shifts from deciding whether to help to deciding when to help. This technique works because of something called the paradox of choice. When people feel forced to do something, they resist. But when they feel like they chose to do it, they become committed to following through. You are not tricking anyone. You are just presenting your request in a way that feels more comfortable to their decision-making process. Parents use this all the time without realizing it. Instead of "Go brush your teeth," they say, "Do you want to brush your teeth first or put on your pajamas first?" The child still has to do both things, but they feel in control of the order. This works with adults too. At work, instead of assigning tasks, offer choices about how or when to complete them. People will work harder on things they feel they chose to do. The mirror trick. When someone feels like you are similar to them, their brain releases chemicals that increase trust and likability. The key is being subtle about it. If they lean forward, wait a moment, then lean forward too. If they cross their arms, count to 3, then cross yours. The delay is important because immediate copying looks obvious and feels creepy, but delayed mirroring feels natural and builds rapport without the other person noticing what you are doing. This works because humans are wired to like people who are similar to them. Your mirror neuron system is constantly scanning other people and looking for similarities. When you match someone's posture or gestures, their brain interprets this as a sign that you understand them and share their perspective. You can mirror voice patterns too. If someone talks slowly and softly, lower your volume and slow down your speech. If they use short sentences, keep your responses brief. If they gesture with their hands while talking, add some hand movements to your conversation. The goal is not to become a copy of the other person, but to create a sense of harmony and connection. Sales professionals and therapists use this technique constantly because it helps people feel heard and understood. The name game. Use someone's name in conversation, but not more than twice in a 5-minute period. Hearing their own name activates the reward centers in their brain and makes them pay more attention to what you are saying. This happens because your name is the most important word in your personal dictionary. When you hear it, your brain immediately focuses all its attention on the speaker. The trick is using names at the right moments. Say their name when you first see them, when you want to emphasize an important point, and when you are saying goodbye. Avoid using their name in every sentence because this sounds fake and manipulative. The goal is to create moments of connection, not to overwhelm them with their own name. This technique works because of something called the cocktail party effect. Even in a noisy room full of conversations, you will always hear your name clearly when someone says it. Your brain is programmed to prioritize your name above all other sounds. When you use someone's name thoughtfully in conversation, you are tapping into this powerful attention system. Remember that nicknames and shortened versions count too. If someone introduces themselves with a nickname, use that instead of their formal name. Pay attention to how they introduce themselves to other people and match that level of formality. Using someone's name correctly shows that you are listening and that you respect how they want to be addressed. This small detail can make a big difference in how much someone likes and remembers you. The pause power. When someone finishes talking, wait 2 full seconds before you respond. This simple pause makes people think you are a better listener and a deeper thinker. Most people start talking the moment they hear silence, but silence is actually a powerful communication tool. During those 2 seconds, something interesting happens in the other person's brain. They often realize they have more to say and will add important details or share deeper thoughts. Some of the most valuable information comes out during these pause moments. People feel rushed to fill silence, so they reveal things they might not have shared if you had jumped in with a quick response. This technique also makes you appear more thoughtful and wise. When you pause before responding, it shows that you are actually considering what the person said instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. Your responses will be better because you gave yourself time to think, and the other person will feel more heard because you took their words seriously. The pause works in negotiations too. After making an offer or hearing a proposal, count to 3 before responding. This creates psychological pressure on the other person to fill the silence, often with concessions or additional information. Silence can be uncomfortable, but learning to be comfortable with short pauses will make you a much more effective communicator. Practice this in low-stakes conversations until it becomes natural. Then use it in important situations where you need to gather information or make a strong impression. The curiosity hook. Start conversations with interesting observations instead of boring questions. Instead of, "How was your weekend?" try, "You look like you had an adventure this weekend." This creates curiosity and gives people a chance to share stories instead of giving one-word answers. The difference is that observations invite storytelling, while questions often lead to simple responses. When you make an interesting observation about someone, their brain immediately wants to either confirm or correct you. Either response leads to a real conversation. Questions like, "How are you?" have become so automatic that people answer without thinking, usually with "fine" or "good." This technique works because humans love to talk about themselves, but they need the right invitation. Generic questions feel like work. Interesting observations feel like the beginning of a story. You are giving people permission to be interesting, instead of just asking them to report basic information. Try observing small details and turning them into conversation starters. "That book looks intense" works better than, "What are you reading?" "You seem excited about something" beats, "What's new?" The key is making observations that could lead somewhere interesting. Even if your guess is wrong, people will usually correct you with the real story, which gives you something genuine to respond to. This turns small talk into actual conversations and helps you build real connections with people. The agreement bridge. Before you disagree with someone, find something in their statement that you can honestly agree with. This prevents their defensive reflexes from kicking in and keeps their mind open to hearing your different perspective. When people feel attacked, they stop listening and start planning their counterattack. Start with phrases like, "You make a good point about," or "I agree that," or "You are right that." Then bridge to your different view with, "And I also think," or "at the same time." This technique acknowledges their perspective before introducing yours. It shows that you heard them and respect their thinking, even if you see things differently. This works because of how the human brain processes disagreement. When someone jumps straight to "but," or "however," or "actually," your defensive systems activate immediately. Your brain interprets disagreement as a threat and shifts into protection mode. But when someone agrees with part of what you said first, you stay in collaborative mode and remain open to new information. You can use this in arguments, negotiations, and even casual conversations where you have different opinions. The goal is not to manipulate people into agreeing with you, but to create an environment where both perspectives can be heard and considered. People are much more likely to listen to your ideas when they feel like you listen to theirs first. This technique turns debates into discussions and helps you influence people without making them feel dismissed or attacked. The energy match. Match the energy level of the person you are talking to, then gradually adjust it to where you want the conversation to go. If someone is speaking quietly and calmly, start there, and then slowly increase your enthusiasm if you want to energize them. If someone is anxious and talking fast, match their pace initially, then gradually slow down to help them relax. This works because energy levels are contagious. When there is a big mismatch between your energy and someone else's, one of you will feel uncomfortable. The person with lower energy will feel overwhelmed, or the person with higher energy will feel ignored or dismissed. Matching energy first creates connection. Then you can lead the interaction in the direction you want. Think of energy matching like tuning a radio. You have to find their frequency first before you can guide the conversation to a different station. If someone comes to you stressed and frantic, meeting them with slow, calm energy will make them feel like you do not understand the urgency. But if you match their energy first, they feel heard, and then you can gradually bring them to a calmer state. This technique works in reverse too. If you want to calm down an angry person, do not tell them to relax. Start by acknowledging their energy level, then slowly model the energy you want them to have. If you want to motivate someone who seems tired or discouraged, do not jump straight to high energy. Meet them where they are, then gradually increase your enthusiasm until they start matching your higher energy level. This creates a much smoother emotional journey for both people. The question flip. When someone asks you a question, you do not want to answer directly. Respond with, "That's an interesting question. What made you think of that?" This buys you time to think and often reveals why they really want to know the information. Sometimes the question behind the question is more important than the original question. When someone asks, "How much money do you make?" they might really be asking, "Are you successful?" or "Can you afford this?" or "Should I be impressed by you?" Understanding the real question helps you give a better response. This technique also works when you need more information before you can give a helpful answer. Instead of guessing what they want to know, you can understand their motivation and give them exactly what they need. It turns vague questions into specific conversations. The question flip is also useful for avoiding topics you are not ready to discuss. It is not about being sneaky or avoiding honesty. It is about understanding what information the person really needs and whether you are the right person to provide it. Sometimes people ask questions they do not really want answers to, and this technique helps you discover what they actually want to talk about. You can still choose to answer the original question after you understand their motivation, but now you can answer it in a way that is more helpful to both of you. The 90-minute sleep cycle unlock. Your brain runs on predictable 90-minute cycles all night long, and timing your wake-up to match these cycles is the difference between feeling refreshed or feeling like you got hit by a truck. Each cycle takes you from light sleep down to deep sleep and back up to light sleep again. If you wake up during deep sleep, you'll feel groggy and confused for hours. If you wake up during light sleep, you'll feel alert immediately. This means sleeping for 7.5 hours feels much better than sleeping for 8 hours, because 7.5 hours equals exactly 5 complete cycles, while 8 hours lands you in the middle of a deep sleep phase. The same principle works for naps. A 20-minute nap keeps you in light sleep and refreshes you. A 90-minute nap gives you a full cycle and wakes you up naturally. Anything in between, especially around 30 to 60 minutes, will leave you feeling worse than when you started. Yes, bias. A tiny head movement can control someone's answer without them realizing it. When you ask for something, while gently nodding your head, the other person becomes much more likely to say yes. Their brain mirrors your movement automatically, and nodding triggers positive, agreeable feelings in their mind. This works because humans are wired to copy each other's body language within seconds of interaction. When you nod, their brain starts nodding internally, even if their head doesn't move. That internal nodding creates a mental state of agreement and cooperation. The effect is strongest when your nod is subtle and matches the rhythm of your words. If you nod too dramatically or too fast, it looks manipulative and backfires. The perfect nodding speed is about 1 nod per second, starting right before you make your request. This technique works for getting time off work, asking for help from strangers, negotiating prices, and getting people to try new ideas. The person feels like saying yes was entirely their own choice, which makes them more committed to following through on their promise. The scarcity shift. When you want someone to value something more, mention what they might lose by not having it, instead of what they will gain by getting it. The human brain responds much more strongly to potential losses than to potential gains. This is called loss aversion, and it is one of the most powerful psychological forces in decision-making. Instead of saying, "This will save you time," try, "Without this, you will keep wasting hours every week on manual tasks." Instead of, "This will make you feel better," try, "Continuing with the current situation will keep draining your energy every day." The message is the same, but the framing activates different parts of the brain. This works because your brain evolved to survive, and survival meant avoiding losses more than seeking gains. Losing something you already have feels twice as bad as gaining something new feels good. When you frame choices in terms of what people might lose, you tap into this powerful survival instinct. You can use this technique when making decisions for yourself too. Instead of focusing on what you will gain from exercise, think about what you will lose by staying sedentary: energy, health, confidence, years of life. Instead of focusing on what you will gain from learning a new skill, think about what you will lose by staying stagnant: opportunities, growth, competitive advantage. Loss framing is not about being negative or fearful. It is about accurately representing the true cost of inaction and helping people make decisions based on the full picture of consequences. Let them correct you, then they trust you. Making a small, obvious mistake on purpose can be one of the smartest things you do in a conversation. When you deliberately get a minor detail wrong and let the other person correct you, something powerful happens in their brain. They feel intelligent, helpful, and superior for a moment, which creates positive feelings toward you. More importantly, the act of correcting you makes them psychologically invested in the conversation. Their brain starts working with you instead of against you. This technique works because humans have a deep need to feel knowledgeable and useful. When someone corrects you, they're not just sharing information, they're demonstrating their expertise and value. This makes them feel good about themselves and about you for giving them the opportunity. The key is making your mistakes small and fixable, not something that makes you look incompetent. Get a date slightly wrong, mix up a minor detail, or understate a number they know well. Let them jump in with the correction, thank them genuinely, and watch how the entire tone of the interaction shifts. They'll be more patient with your questions, more generous with their time, and more likely to help you achieve your goals because they feel like a partner in the conversation rather than a target. The temperature test. Pay attention to the temperature of someone's hands when you shake them. Cold hands usually mean they are nervous or anxious. Warm hands suggest they are relaxed and confident. This gives you valuable information about their emotional state before you even start talking. Your body temperature changes based on your emotional state because of how your nervous system works. When you are anxious, blood flow moves away from your extremities toward your core organs. When you are relaxed, blood flows normally throughout your body, keeping your hands warm. Use this information to adjust how you interact with someone. If their hands are cold, they might need more time to warm up to you. Speak more slowly, give them space, and avoid jumping into intense topics right away. If their hands are warm, they are probably ready for normal conversation and might be open to deeper discussions. This technique also works in reverse. If you want to project confidence, make sure your own hands are warm before important handshakes. Run them under warm water, rub them together, or keep them in your pockets until the last moment. People will unconsciously interpret warm hands as a sign of confidence and emotional stability. Cold hands can make you seem nervous, even if you feel fine inside. This small detail can influence first impressions more than you might expect, so it is worth paying attention to both your own hands and other people's hands during introductions. The compliment sandwich upgrade. The traditional compliment sandwich, round, praise, criticism, praise, actually makes people remember the criticism more clearly than the compliments. This happens because negative information hits your brain harder and sticks longer than positive information. A better approach is the feedback spiral. Start with specific praise. Ask what they think could be improved. Let them identify the problems themselves. Then end with encouragement about their ability to fix those issues. This technique works because people are much more receptive to criticism they generate themselves than criticism imposed by others. When they identify the problem, their ego isn't threatened and their defenses don't activate. They feel smart and self-aware rather than attacked and defensive. The specific praise at the beginning makes them feel valued and appreciated, which puts them in a positive mindset for self-reflection. The encouragement at the end gives them confidence that improvement is possible. This approach takes longer than direct criticism, but it creates lasting change instead of temporary compliance. The spotlight effect shield. Most people dramatically overestimate how much others notice their mistakes, embarrassing moments, and social awkwardness. This is called the spotlight effect, the feeling that everyone is watching and judging your every move. In reality, people are far too busy worrying about their own performance to spend much time analyzing yours. Understanding this can free you from social anxiety and give you permission to take more risks. That stumble over your words during a presentation. Half the audience didn't even notice, and the other half forgot about it within minutes. The coffee stain on your shirt? Most people either don't see it or don't care. Your awkward joke that didn't land? Everyone is too focused on what they're going to say next to dwell on your social misstep. When you truly grasp that you're not the center of everyone else's attention, you can relax and be more authentic in social situations. The silence test. After you make an important point in conversation, stay quiet and wait for the other person to respond. Do not fill the silence with more explanation or additional points. This forces them to process what you said and often leads to agreement or important questions. Most people are uncomfortable with silence and will rush to fill it with more talking. But when you keep adding information after making your point, you dilute the impact of your message. The other person's brain starts focusing on the new information instead of processing your main point. Silence also creates a sense of importance around what you just said. When you stop talking after making a key statement, it signals that this information deserves consideration. The pause gives weight to your words and makes them more memorable. This technique is especially powerful in negotiations, sales conversations, and any situation where you want someone to really think about what you have said. After stating your price, making an offer, or presenting an important idea, resist the urge to keep talking. Let the silence do the work for you. The other person will usually respond in a way that gives you valuable information about how they are processing your message. Their response will tell you whether they understood, whether they agree, and what their concerns might be. Use silence as a tool to gather information and create emphasis, not just as an awkward pause to fill with more words. Let them finish the sentence. Interrupting someone mid-sentence doesn't just annoy them, it triggers a stress response that makes them forget half of what they were trying to say. When you jump in with your thoughts before they've completed theirs, their brain experiences it as a threat. Their body releases cortisol, their working memory gets disrupted, and they lose track of their original point. This makes them feel frustrated and unheard, even if you're agreeing with them. The solution is simple, but requires real discipline. Let them finish every sentence completely, even when you know where they're heading. Even when they pause to think of the right word. Even when they're saying something you've heard before. This extra patience pays massive dividends. When people feel truly heard, they relax, open up, and start sharing information they wouldn't normally reveal. They'll give you their real concerns, their hidden motivations, and their genuine feelings about the situation. The conversation becomes collaborative instead of competitive. The confidence loop. Your body language changes your mind before your mind changes your body language. Stand up straight with your shoulders back for just 2 minutes, and your brain will flood with confidence chemicals. This happens because your posture sends direct signals to your hormone system. When you take up more space, your body produces more testosterone and less cortisol. Scientists discovered this by accident when they measured hormone levels in people before and after power poses. The changes were dramatic and happened fast. Within 2 minutes, testosterone went up by 20% and stress hormones dropped by 25%. Your body is constantly sending chemical messages to your brain about how you should feel. Before any important meeting or conversation, find a private space and stand like a superhero. Feet shoulder width apart, hands on your hips, chin up. Hold this position while breathing deeply. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between real confidence and fake confidence. Within minutes, you will actually feel more powerful and less anxious. This works even if you feel silly doing it at first. Your body teaches your brain how to feel confident, not the other way around. You can also use micro versions of this throughout the day. Straighten your spine while sitting. Take up more room at the table. Keep your head level when walking. Each small change sends confidence signals to your brain, creating a loop where good posture makes you feel confident, which makes you stand taller, which makes you feel even more confident. The assumption close. Instead of asking if someone wants to do something, assume they do and ask about the details. This works because it skips over the yes or no decision and moves straight to the planning phase. When someone is already thinking about how to do something, they are much more likely to actually do it. Replace, "Do you want to get lunch tomorrow?" with, "Where should we go for lunch tomorrow?" The second version assumes they want to have lunch and just needs to figure out the location. Their brain starts thinking about restaurant options instead of whether they want to eat with you at all. This technique works because of how our decision-making process works. Every choice has multiple decision points. First, you decide whether to do something. Then you decide when to do it. Then you decide how to do it. By skipping the first decision, you make the whole process feel easier and more likely to happen. You can use this for bigger decisions too. Instead of, "Would you like to work on this project together?" Try, "When should we start working on this project?" Instead of, "Do you want to buy this?" Try, "Would you prefer to pay in full or set up a payment plan?" The assumption close works best when you have already built some interest or rapport. It is not about forcing people to do things they do not want to do. It is about making it easier for them to say yes to things they are already considering. This technique removes friction from the decision-making process and helps people move from thinking to doing, the future self. Short-term thinking often conflicts with long-term benefits. Exercise feels difficult now, but your future self will benefit from better health. Saving money feels restrictive now, but your future self will appreciate financial security. The future self technique helps bridge this gap by making long-term consequences feel more immediate and personal. This works because your brain has trouble connecting present actions to future outcomes. When you help someone visualize their future self experiencing the consequences of today's choices, you make those abstract future benefits or costs feel more real and motivating. The technique works for avoiding negative behaviors too. Ask someone how their future self will feel about the consequences of procrastination, poor health choices, or avoiding difficult conversations. This often provides the motivation needed to take action in the present moment. You can use this with yourself by regularly checking in with your future self. Before making decisions, pause and consider how you will feel about this choice in a week, a month, or a year. This long-term perspective often clarifies what actions align with your real values and priorities, rather than just your immediate impulses. The memory palace connection method. Your brain remembers stories and spatial relationships much better than isolated facts or random lists. You can use this natural tendency to remember important information by creating vivid mental journeys through familiar places. Choose a route you know well, your house, your commute, or your workplace. Then place the items you want to remember at specific locations along that route, connecting each piece of information to something visual and memorable at that spot. For example, to remember a presentation outline, you might place your opening joke at your front door, your first main point at your kitchen table, and your conclusion at your back door. The more ridiculous and vivid you make these mental images, the better you'll remember them. This technique works because it leverages your brain's existing strengths instead of fighting against its limitations. Instead of trying to memorize abstract information, you're creating a memorable story that unfolds in a familiar setting. Your feet point to your true intent. Everyone watches faces and hands during conversations, but feet tell the real truth. When someone's feet point toward the door during a meeting, they want to leave, even if they're smiling and nodding. When their feet point toward you, they're genuinely interested in what you're saying. When feet point away from someone, while the body faces them, it signals internal conflict or discomfort. This happens because feet are controlled by the most honest part of your brain, the limbic system that handles fight or flight responses. Unlike faces, which you consciously control, feet react automatically to your true feelings. In group conversations, people's feet create invisible triangles that show the real social dynamics. The person everyone's feet point toward is the real leader, regardless of who's officially in charge. When someone crosses their legs and points the top foot toward you, it's a sign of attraction or interest. When they tuck both feet under their chair, they feel defensive or want to hide. Learning to read feet gives you a huge advantage in sales, dating, and workplace politics, because you'll know what people really think before they even realize it themselves. The choice architecture. People have a slight bias toward choosing middle options when presented with 3 or more choices, especially when they feel uncertain about the differences between options. This middle bias occurs because people often perceive middle options as balanced or moderate choices that avoid extremes. When someone is unsure about the best choice, they often gravitate toward options that seem safe and reasonable, rather than options that might be too much or too little. The choice architecture works best when all the options are genuinely good choices, and when the person has some uncertainty about which option is best for them. This is not about manipulating people into bad decisions, but about organizing good options in a way that makes decision-making easier. You can also use this technique by presenting your preferred option alongside one clearly inferior option and one option that might seem excessive. This makes your preferred choice appear as the reasonable middle ground, even if you only present 3 total options. This principle applies to pricing, menu design, and any situation where people need to choose from multiple similar options. The key is understanding that how you present choices affects which choice people make, so you can organize options in ways that guide people toward choices that work well for both of you. The energy investment. When you want someone to value something more, ask them to contribute some effort to it. People value things more when they have invested time or energy in them, even if the contribution is small. This is called the IKEA effect, because people value furniture more when they assemble it themselves. This technique works because effort creates psychological ownership. When someone contributes to something, their brain interprets that contribution as evidence that the thing must be valuable. Otherwise, why would they have spent their time and energy on it? This creates a positive feedback loop where investment leads to valuation. You can use this in teaching by asking students to research part of the topic themselves rather than just presenting all the information. You can use it in relationships by asking for input on decisions rather than making all choices yourself. You can use it in sales by asking customers to customize or personalize their purchase. The energy investment does not need to be large to be effective. Even small contributions like filling out a form, choosing colors, or providing input on details can increase someone's sense of ownership and commitment. The key is giving people opportunities to participate in creating or customizing their experience. This principle also explains why people often resist solutions that are handed to them completely finished. When someone has not contributed any effort to a solution, they do not feel psychological ownership of it. But when they participate in developing the solution, even in small ways, they become much more committed to implementing it successfully. The contrast effect. When you want to make something seem more reasonable or attractive, present it alongside a less attractive option first. The contrast makes your preferred option look better by comparison than it would look if presented alone. This works because your brain evaluates options relatively, rather than on absolute scales. The same price, effort level, or commitment can seem high or low, depending on what you compare it to. When you control the comparison, you influence how people perceive your offer. The contrast effect is used in pricing strategies, where businesses offer an expensive option alongside their target option to make the target option seem more reasonably priced. It also works for time commitments, effort requirements, and risk levels. You can use this technique ethically by presenting realistic alternatives that help people understand the full range of options available to them. The goal is not to trick people into bad decisions, but to help them see your preferred option in proper context rather than in isolation. The contrast effect also works in reverse. If you want to appreciate something you already have, compare it to worse alternatives rather than better ones. This technique can increase satisfaction with your current situation by highlighting what you might take for granted when you only compare upward to better options. The implementation question. After someone agrees to do something, ask, when specifically will you do this? This transforms vague commitments into concrete plans and significantly increases the likelihood that the person will actually follow through on their agreement. Most good intentions fail because they remain abstract rather than becoming specific plans. When someone commits to exercise more, or call that client, or organize my office, they have good intentions, but no clear plan for when or how they will take action. The implementation question bridges this gap. Research shows that people are much more likely to complete tasks when they have specified when and where they will do them. This is called implementation intention, and it works because it creates a mental trigger that connects specific circumstances to specific actions. The question when specifically is more effective than just when because it requires concrete details rather than vague timeframes. Soon, or this week, are not specific enough to create reliable implementation intentions. Tuesday morning at 9, or right after lunch, create much stronger mental triggers. You can use this technique with yourself by always following your commitments and goals with specific implementation plans. Instead of just deciding to do something, decide when and where you will do it. This simple addition dramatically improves follow-through rates and helps turn good intentions into actual behavior changes. The emotional label. Labeling emotions activates the prefrontal cortex, which is the brain region responsible for emotional regulation. When you put words to feelings, you literally help the person's brain process the emotion more effectively. This is why talking about feelings often makes people feel better, even when the situation has not changed. This technique works because emotions often feel overwhelming when they are unnamed and unclear. When you help someone identify what they are feeling, you give them some distance from the emotion and help them understand their internal experience. This clarity usually reduces emotional intensity and improves decision-making. The key is naming emotions without judgment or trying to fix them. You are not telling someone they should or should not feel a certain way. You are simply observing and acknowledging their emotional state, which helps them process it more effectively. You can use emotional labeling with yourself too. When you feel upset, confused, or overwhelmed, pause and try to name exactly what emotion you are experiencing. Are you angry, disappointed, anxious, frustrated, or something else? This simple act of labeling often provides emotional relief and helps you think more clearly about how to respond to your situation. The high five memory lock. Physical touch creates stronger memories than words alone, and a high five at the right moment can lock important information into someone's brain permanently. When you share good news, reach an agreement, or want someone to remember a key point, extend your hand for a high five. The brief physical contact releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which makes the moment feel more significant and memorable. The movement also engages their motor cortex, creating a physical memory alongside the mental one. This is why athletes high five after scoring. It's not just celebration, it's neurological reinforcement. The technique works in business meetings, teaching situations, and personal relationships. When someone agrees to help you, seal it with a high five. When they grasp a difficult concept you're explaining, celebrate with brief physical contact. When you want them to remember your name or your company, create a positive physical association. The key is timing. The high five must feel like a natural response to something genuinely worth celebrating. Forced or inappropriate physical contact will backfire and make people uncomfortable. The success pattern. Most people celebrate outcomes, but do not analyze the process that created those outcomes. When you help someone break down their successful approach, you help them understand what they did right, so they can do it again. This builds confidence and competence at the same time. The success pattern technique also reveals strategies that the person might not have consciously recognized. When they walk through their process step by step, they often discover that they used specific approaches or made particular choices that contributed to their success. This works for small successes as well as major achievements. When someone handles a difficult conversation well, ask about their approach. When they complete a project efficiently, ask about their planning and execution process. These patterns can be applied to future situations. You benefit from this technique too, because you learn strategies that have been tested in real situations. Instead of just reading about theoretical approaches, you discover practical methods that actually worked for someone in circumstances similar to what you might face. This gives you a library of proven strategies you can adapt for your own challenges. The perspective flip. Most interpersonal frustration comes from interpreting other people's behavior through your own perspective, rather than trying to understand their perspective. When someone seems rude, inconsiderate, or difficult, there are usually underlying reasons that make sense from their point of view. This technique does not excuse problematic behavior or suggest that you should tolerate everything. It simply helps you understand why someone might be acting in ways that seem unreasonable to you. This understanding often reduces your emotional reaction and helps you respond more effectively. The perspective flip also helps people develop empathy and emotional intelligence. When you regularly practice trying to understand others' viewpoints, you become better at reading social situations and managing relationships. This skill improves both personal and professional interactions. Sometimes, the perspective flip reveals that someone's behavior is not actually about you at all. When you realize that someone is stressed about their own problems, dealing with personal challenges, or responding to pressures you cannot see, you can respond with compassion rather than defensiveness. This usually leads to better outcomes for everyone involved. The completion ritual. Create a specific action you do every time you finish a task or project. This could be checking something off a list, saying "done" out loud, or taking a deep breath. This ritual helps your brain register completion and provides satisfaction that motivates you to start the next task. Many people move from task to task without ever truly acknowledging completion. This creates a sense of never being finished and reduces the satisfaction that comes from accomplishment. A completion ritual gives your brain a clear signal that one thing is done before moving to the next thing. The ritual can be simple and quick, but it needs to be consistent and intentional. Some people physically cross items off their to-do list. Others put completed files in a specific folder. Some people say a particular phrase or make a specific gesture. The key is doing the same thing every time you finish something. This technique works because completion, satisfaction, is a powerful motivator. When your brain gets clear, signals that tasks are finished, and that finishing feels good, you become more motivated to complete other tasks. The ritual creates positive reinforcement for finishing things. You can also use completion rituals for larger projects by creating mini rituals for completing phases or milestones. This helps maintain motivation during long-term work and provides regular satisfaction instead of waiting until the entire project is done to feel accomplished. The progress frame. Instead of focusing on how much work remains, regularly acknowledge how much progress has been made. This maintains motivation during long projects and helps people feel accomplished rather than overwhelmed by what still needs to happen. The human brain pays more attention to what is missing than to what has been achieved. This negativity bias can be useful for identifying problems, but it can also be demotivating during long-term projects, where substantial work remains even after significant progress. The progress frame works because it activates feelings of accomplishment and competence rather than feelings of inadequacy and overwhelm. When people feel good about what they have already achieved, they have more energy and motivation to continue working toward their goals. You can use this technique with yourself by regularly reviewing what you have accomplished, rather than just focusing on your remaining to-do list. Keep a done list alongside your to-do list so you can see your progress visually. This helps maintain motivation and provides perspective on your productivity. The progress frame also works in team situations. When groups are working on long projects, regularly acknowledge milestones and completed phases rather than just focusing on upcoming deadlines. This helps maintain team morale and motivation throughout extended efforts. The cognitive reframing tool. The same situation can feel completely different depending on how you think about it. You can't always control what happens to you, but you can often control how you interpret what happens. This isn't about positive thinking or denying reality. It's about choosing the most useful and accurate frame for understanding your experiences. When something goes wrong, ask yourself what you can learn from it, how it might lead to better outcomes, or what skills you're developing by handling the challenge. When something goes well, consider what specific actions contributed to the success so you can repeat them. When you're facing a difficult decision, think about what your future self would advise, or what someone you respect would do in the same situation. These different perspectives don't change the facts, but they can dramatically change how you feel about those facts and what actions seem appropriate in response. The compliment timing secret. The timing of your compliments determines whether they feel genuine or manipulative. Compliments given immediately before asking for something feel like buttering someone up. Compliments given immediately after receiving something feel like obligatory politeness. The most powerful compliments come at unexpected moments when you have nothing to gain from the interaction. Send appreciation messages on random Tuesday afternoons. Praise people's work when you're not asking for anything in return. Acknowledge someone's positive qualities during casual conversations that aren't about them. These unexpected compliments feel authentic because there's no obvious self-serving motive behind them. They also stand out in people's memory because they break the normal pattern of transactional praise. When you do eventually need to ask these people for something, they'll remember that you appreciated them when you didn't have to, which makes them much more willing to help. The alternative explanation. When you find yourself creating negative stories about why something happened, force yourself to generate at least 2 other possible explanations before settling on your initial interpretation. This prevents you from getting stuck in assumptions that might be wrong and causing unnecessary stress. Your brain automatically creates explanations for events, especially negative or confusing ones. But the first explanation your brain generates is often based on your fears, past experiences, or limited information, rather than objective analysis of the current situation. The alternative explanation technique works because it activates your analytical thinking rather than just your emotional reactions. When you force yourself to consider multiple possibilities, you usually discover that your initial negative interpretation is not the only reasonable explanation for what happened. For example, if someone does not respond to your message quickly, your first thought might be that they are ignoring you or that you said something wrong. Alternative explanations might include that they are busy, dealing with technical problems, or planning to respond when they have more time to give you a thoughtful answer. This technique reduces anxiety and improves relationships because it prevents you from reacting emotionally to situations based on assumptions that might be incorrect. When you consider multiple explanations, you can respond more appropriately to the actual situation rather than to your fears about what might be happening. The decision deadline. Some decisions benefit from extensive analysis, but many decisions get worse when you spend too much time on them. Analysis paralysis occurs when people keep gathering information and considering options without ever moving toward a choice. The decision deadline creates artificial urgency that forces closure. The key is choosing an appropriate deadline that allows enough time for reasonable consideration but prevents endless delay. For small decisions, this might be a few hours or a day. For larger decisions, this might be a week or a month. The timeline should match the importance of the decision. When you reach the deadline, you choose the best option available at that time based on the information you have gathered. This prevents the perfect from being the enemy of the good and helps you make decisions that are good enough to move forward with. This technique also reduces decision anxiety because it creates a clear endpoint for the decision-making process. Instead of feeling like you need to keep analyzing until you find the perfect choice, you can focus your energy on gathering the most important information before your deadline and then committing to your best judgment. The cognitive load distribution strategy. Your brain processes different types of information in different systems, and overloading any single system reduces overall performance. You can improve comprehension and retention by distributing cognitive load across multiple processing channels. When explaining complex information, combine visual elements with verbal explanation rather than relying on words alone. Use spatial organization to help people understand relationships between concepts. Include physical movement or hands-on activities when possible. Break information into smaller chunks and pause between concepts to let each piece settle before adding the next. This multimodal approach works because it prevents any single processing system from becoming overwhelmed while engaging multiple memory pathways simultaneously. People understand better and remember longer when information engages several cognitive systems instead of taxing just one. The strength transfer. Most people have more transferable skills than they recognize. Someone who is good at organizing events has skills that transfer to project management. Someone who is good at explaining complex topics to children has skills that transfer to training adults. The strength transfer helps people recognize these connections. This technique works because it activates existing confidence rather than trying to build confidence from scratch. When people realize they already have relevant abilities, they approach new challenges with more optimism and less anxiety. Ask questions like, how is this similar to something you have done successfully before? Or, what skills have you used in other situations that might be helpful here? This helps people identify their existing resources and see new challenges as extensions of their current abilities rather than completely foreign territory. The strength transfer also helps people learn faster because they can build on existing knowledge rather than starting from zero. When you help someone connect new challenges to familiar strengths, you give them a foundation to build on and a source of confidence as they develop new skills. The positive assumption. When you are unsure about someone's intentions or motivations, choose to assume positive intent until you have clear evidence otherwise. This improves relationships and reduces stress while still allowing you to protect yourself if necessary. Most interpersonal problems are caused by misunderstandings rather than malicious intent. When you start with the assumption that people generally mean well, you approach situations with curiosity and openness rather than defensiveness and suspicion. This usually leads to better outcomes for everyone. Assuming positive intent does not mean being naive or ignoring red flags. It means giving people the benefit of the doubt in ambiguous situations and asking clarifying questions rather than jumping to negative conclusions about their motivations. This technique reduces your own stress levels because you spend less mental energy worrying about whether people are trying to harm you or take advantage of you. Most people are primarily focused on their own concerns and challenges rather than plotting against others. The positive assumption also improves your relationships because people can sense when you trust their intentions versus when you are suspicious of them. When people feel trusted and respected, they usually respond by being more trustworthy and respectful. This creates positive cycles in relationships rather than defensive cycles. The deadline reality. Procrastination usually happens when immediate comfort feels more important than future consequences. This occurs because your brain naturally prioritizes immediate experiences over future ones. Making future consequences feel more immediate and real helps overcome this natural bias. Ask questions like, what specifically will happen if this does not get done on time? And, how will that affect you personally? And, what will you have to give up or deal with if you miss this deadline? These questions help make abstract consequences feel concrete and personal. The deadline reality technique also helps people distinguish between artificial deadlines that create unnecessary pressure and real deadlines that have genuine consequences. Sometimes people procrastinate because they unconsciously recognize that a deadline is not actually important, and clarifying real consequences helps prioritize appropriately. You can use this technique with yourself by regularly connecting your current choices to their likely future consequences. When you understand how today's actions will affect tomorrow's options, you can make better decisions about how to spend your time and energy. The pattern recognition. Many recurring problems are actually variations of the same underlying issue. When people only focus on the surface details of each situation, they miss the deeper patterns that create repeated difficulties. Pattern recognition helps address root causes rather than just symptoms. Ask questions like, what similarities do you notice between this situation and previous challenges you have faced? Or, what themes keep coming up in these different situations? This helps people step back and see the bigger picture, rather than getting lost in the details of individual incidents. Pattern recognition also helps people develop more effective strategies because they can address the underlying issue rather than repeatedly solving the same surface problem in slightly different forms. This is more efficient and leads to more lasting solutions. Sometimes the pattern involves external circumstances, but often it involves the person's own responses or choices that contribute to similar outcomes. When people recognize their own patterns, they can make different choices that lead to different results. This gives them more control over their experiences. Gratitude, specificity multiplier. Generic gratitude, like "thanks for everything," feels polite, but doesn't create strong emotional connections. Specific gratitude, that identifies exactly what someone did and how it helped you, creates much stronger positive feelings. Instead of "thanks for your help," try "thanks for staying late to review those numbers. Catching that error before the client meeting saved us from a potentially embarrassing situation." This specificity works because it shows you were paying attention to their actions and understand the real impact they had. It also helps them understand which of their behaviors are most valuable, making them more likely to repeat those actions in the future. Specific gratitude feels more genuine because it requires you to actually think about what the person did, rather than offering a generic acknowledgement. The extra effort you put into crafting a specific thank you message signals that their help was genuinely meaningful to you. The story bridge. Stories bypass the brain's resistance to being told what to do and let people draw their own conclusions. The human brain is wired to learn from stories. When you tell someone what to do directly, they often feel defensive or dismissed. But when you share a relevant story, they listen with curiosity and extract the lessons themselves. The conclusions they draw feel like their own insights rather than your instructions. Keep your stories short and relevant. The goal is not to make the conversation about you, but to provide a perspective that might help them think through their situation differently. End your story and then ask them what they think or how it relates to their situation. For example, if someone is struggling with a difficult coworker, instead of saying, "You should talk to your boss," you might say, "I once worked with someone who reminded me of what you are describing. At first, I tried to avoid them, but eventually, I realized they were actually feeling left out of the team. When I started including them in lunch conversations, the whole dynamic changed. What do you think might be going on with your situation?" This approach gives them a new way to think about their problem without making them feel like you are trying to fix them. Stories plant seeds of ideas that people can choose to use or ignore based on their own judgment. The Zigarnik effect advantage. Your brain has a built-in obsession with unfinished tasks that you can use to keep people thinking about you long after conversations end. When you leave something incomplete or create an open loop, their mind will keep coming back to it until it's resolved. This is why cliffhangers work so well in movies and television shows. Your brain craves closure and completion. You can use this principle in business and personal relationships by strategically leaving conversations unfinished. End meetings with an intriguing question rather than a summary. Send emails that hint at interesting information you'll share later. Start telling a story, but save the conclusion for your next interaction. The key is to create genuine curiosity, not artificial suspense. The unfinished element needs to be something they actually care about knowing. When done well, this technique ensures you stay at the top of their mental priority list between encounters. They'll be looking forward to seeing you again, instead of forgetting about you completely. The competence assumption effect. When you assume someone is capable and treat them accordingly, they often rise to meet those expectations. This isn't naive optimism, it's strategic psychology. People perform better when they feel trusted and respected than when they feel micromanaged or doubted. Instead of giving detailed instructions for every step, outline the goal and timeline, then ask how they plan to approach it. Instead of checking in constantly, schedule specific milestone reviews and trust them to manage their work between those points. This approach works because competence assumptions become self-fulfilling prophecies. When people feel trusted, they take more ownership and work harder to justify that trust. When they feel doubted, they often perform to the lower expectations or become defensive and disengaged. The key is being genuine about your confidence in their abilities, while still maintaining appropriate oversight and support. The certainty calibration check. Most people are either overconfident in areas where they know little, or underconfident in areas where they actually have expertise. This miscalibration leads to poor decision-making and missed opportunities. You can improve your judgment by regularly checking how your confidence matches reality. When you make predictions or estimates, write down both your answer and how confident you feel about it. Then track your accuracy over time. If you're consistently wrong when you feel certain, you need to lower your confidence. If you're usually right when you feel unsure, you can trust your instincts more. This calibration process helps you make better decisions because you'll know when to act quickly, based on strong intuition, and when to gather more information before moving forward. It also makes you more credible to others because your expressed confidence will match your actual reliability. The progressive commitment structure. Large commitments feel overwhelming, but small commitments feel manageable and often lead naturally to bigger ones. You can use this principle to help people gradually engage with ideas, projects, or changes that might initially seem too demanding. Start with the smallest possible commitment that moves in the right direction. If you want someone to attend regular meetings, first invite them to a single session. If you want them to try a new approach, ask them to test it for one day or one client. If you want them to read a book, suggest they read just the first chapter. Each small yes makes the next slightly larger request feel more reasonable because they've already started the journey. This technique works because it reduces the psychological barrier to getting started while building momentum through small successes. The social proof multiplication effect. People look to others for guidance about what's normal, appropriate, or desirable, especially in uncertain situations. You can leverage this tendency by strategically sharing examples of similar people who have made choices you want them to consider. The key is finding the right comparison group, people they identify with or aspire to be like. For a small business owner, share examples of other small business owners, not Fortune 500 companies. For someone considering a career change, mention others who made similar transitions at comparable life stages. For someone trying a new restaurant, reference friends with similar tastes who enjoyed the experience. The examples need to be specific and credible, not vague claims about popularity. Instead of, everyone loves this approach, try. 3 other marketing directors in companies your size have used this strategy to increase engagement by 20 to 30%. This specificity makes the social proof feel more relevant and trustworthy. The reverse psychology reset. When someone is resistant to an idea, sometimes the fastest way to change their mind is to argue against your own position. Present the strongest possible case for why they shouldn't do what you want them to do. List all the legitimate downsides, risks, and challenges. This technique works because it triggers their natural urge to disagree and think independently. When you're pushing them towards something, their brain pushes back automatically. When you're pushing them away from something, their brain becomes curious about why it might actually be worthwhile. The reverse psychology must be genuine. If they sense manipulation, the technique backfires completely. You need to present real concerns and valid objections, not obviously fake ones. This approach also builds trust because you're being honest about potential problems instead of overselling. They'll appreciate your honesty and feel more confident about moving forward because they know you've thought through the downsides. The technique works especially well with independent, strong-willed people who hate being told what to do. The problem ownership transfer. When someone comes to you with a problem, your natural instinct might be to solve it for them or offer immediate advice. This approach often fails because it keeps you responsible for the solution instead of empowering them to take ownership. A more effective strategy is to ask questions that guide them toward finding their own answers. Instead of, here's what you should do, try, what options do you see? Instead of, the solution is obvious, try, what would need to change for this to work better? This questioning approach works because solutions people generate themselves feel more legitimate and actionable than solutions imposed by others. They're also more likely to follow through on ideas they came up with, even if you guided them there with strategic questions. The key is being patient enough to let them think through the problem instead of jumping in with quick fixes that might not fit their specific situation. The expectation setting framework. Disappointment happens when reality falls short of expectations, not when reality is objectively bad. You can manage this by being strategic about the expectations you set for yourself and others. Underpromise and overdeliver is classic advice, but it needs to be done skillfully to avoid setting expectations so low that people lose interest entirely. The key is to promise realistic outcomes while preparing people for the process of achieving them. If a project might take 3 weeks, say, it will take 3 weeks, but mention that complex work sometimes involves unexpected challenges. If you're learning a new skill, acknowledge that progress might be uneven rather than promising linear improvement. The reciprocal disclosure principle. Self-disclosure creates intimacy, but it needs to be reciprocal to build trust rather than awkwardness. When someone shares something personal with you, they expect you to share something of similar depth in return. When you share first, you create social pressure for them to match your level of openness. This exchange of vulnerabilities builds connection because it demonstrates mutual trust and creates psychological equality. The key is matching the intensity and type of disclosure. If they share a professional struggle, respond with your own work challenge, not a deep personal trauma. If they mention a minor embarrassing moment, share your own light, self-deprecating story, not a serious life crisis. The goal is creating a gradual spiral of increasing openness, where both parties feel comfortable and valued. This technique works for building friendships, improving team dynamics, and deepening romantic relationships. The momentum building technique. Success creates success through a psychological phenomenon called positive momentum. When people experience small wins, their confidence increases, and they become more willing to tackle bigger challenges. You can use this principle to help others build confidence or to structure your own progress through difficult projects. Start with tasks that are challenging enough to feel meaningful, but easy enough to complete successfully. Each completion builds psychological momentum that carries forward to the next challenge. In group settings, begin meetings with quick wins or positive updates before tackling complex problems. In personal development, choose habits that you can maintain consistently before adding more ambitious goals. The key is making early successes genuine and relevant to the larger objective, not just artificially easy tasks that provide false confidence. Real momentum comes from overcoming real challenges, even small ones. The micro-expression reading system. People's faces leak their true feelings in tiny expressions that last less than a quarter of a second, usually before they can consciously control their reaction. Learning to spot these micro-expressions gives you a huge advantage in negotiations, relationships, and social situations. The most reliable micro-expressions to watch for are genuine surprise, which causes the eyebrows to shoot up briefly, real anger, which tightens the lips and narrows the eyes, and authentic joy, which creates crow's feet around the eyes that fake smiles can't replicate. Contempt shows as a slight raising of one corner of the mouth, while disgust causes the nose to wrinkle slightly. Fear widens the eyes and raises the upper eyelids. The key is watching for these split-second reactions right after you say something important, before their conscious mind takes control of their expression. These micro-leaks tell you their real reaction, which helps you adjust your approach accordingly. The preemptive objection strategy. Before people can reject your idea, address their most likely concerns yourself. This technique works because it shows you've thought through the potential problems and aren't trying to hide them. It also prevents them from focusing all their mental energy on finding flaws in your proposal. Start with something like, "You're probably wondering about," or "The obvious concern here is," and then address that issue directly. This approach builds credibility because you're being proactive about potential problems, rather than defensive when they're brought up. It also allows you to frame the objections in the most reasonable way and provide your best responses without being interrupted or having to overcome emotional resistance. When people see that you've already considered their concerns, they're much more likely to focus on the benefits of your proposal, rather than spending all their time poking holes in it. Ask about childhood for instant connection. People's faces change when they talk about their childhood. Their voices get warmer, their posture relaxes. Their eyes often look up and to the side as they access those old memories. This happens because childhood memories are usually tied to strong emotions and simpler times. Asking about someone's childhood creates instant intimacy because these memories are deeply personal. Most adults don't get asked about their early years very often. When someone shows genuine interest in their past, it feels special and meaningful. The key is asking the right kind of childhood questions. Don't ask about trauma or difficult family situations. Focus on positive memories and experiences. Ask about their favorite childhood game, or what they wanted to be when they grew up, or their best birthday ever. These questions work because they tap into the person's core identity. The things we loved as children often reflect our true nature before the world taught us to be different. When someone shares these memories with you, they're sharing a piece of their authentic self. Listen carefully to their childhood stories. People often reveal their deepest values and fears through these early experiences. Someone who talks about building forts might value independence and creativity. Someone who mentions team sports might prioritize cooperation and achievement. Use this information to understand them better and connect more deeply. Reference their childhood interests later in conversation. Show that you remember and value what they shared with you. The behavioral momentum principle. People tend to continue doing whatever they're already doing unless something significant interrupts the pattern. You can use this natural inertia to encourage positive behaviors by making it easier to continue good actions than to stop them. If someone starts exercising, help them maintain momentum by reducing barriers to consistency, maybe by scheduling regular workout times or connecting them with others who share the same goal. If someone begins learning a new skill, create systems that make daily practice more convenient than skipping it. If someone starts eating healthier, organize their environment so nutritious, choices are more accessible than less healthy alternatives. This approach works because it leverages the power of existing motion, rather than trying to create new motivation from scratch. The key is identifying which behaviors are worth reinforcing and then systematically removing obstacles to their continuation. Speak slower to sound smarter. Your speaking speed sends instant signals about your intelligence and authority. Most people talk too fast when they're nervous or trying to impress someone. This creates the opposite effect. Fast speech makes you sound uncertain, like you're rushing to get your words out before someone cuts you off. Confident people speak slowly because they believe others will wait to hear what they have to say. When you slow down your speech, several things happen in the listener's brain. First, they perceive you as more thoughtful. Slow speech suggests you're choosing your words carefully. Second, you seem more authoritative. Leaders don't rush their words. The magic happens at about 180 words per minute. That's roughly 3 words per second. Most anxious speakers go much faster, sometimes over 250 words per minute. Practice speaking at this slower pace during low-stakes conversations first. Time yourself reading a paragraph out loud to get a feel for the rhythm. There's another benefit to speaking slowly. It gives your own brain more time to choose better words and organize your thoughts. You'll make fewer verbal mistakes and sound more articulate. Your ideas will flow in a clearer sequence. People will interrupt you less because your pacing commands respect. The peak end memory bias. People judge experiences largely based on how they felt at the most intense moment and how the experience ended, not on the average level of satisfaction throughout. This means you can dramatically improve how people remember interactions by managing these 2 critical moments. If you're giving a presentation, Save your strongest point for the climax and end with something memorable and positive. If you're hosting an event, pay special attention to the welcome experience and the goodbye process. If you're managing a difficult conversation, work toward ending on a note of mutual respect and forward progress, even if the middle was tense. This technique works because memory is reconstructive. People don't store every detail of an experience, just key moments that their brain uses to create a general impression later. By optimizing the peak and the ending, you can ensure that people remember even challenging experiences more favorably than they might have felt during the actual event. The empathy before strategy method. When people are upset, frustrated, or resistant to change, they need to feel understood before they can engage with solutions. Most people skip the empathy step and jump straight into problem-solving mode, which often backfires because the other person doesn't feel heard. A more effective sequence is to first acknowledge their emotions and perspective, then collaborate on potential solutions. Listen to their concerns without immediately offering fixes. Reflect back what you're hearing to make sure you understand their position. Validate the parts of their feelings that make sense, even if you disagree with their conclusions. Only after they feel genuinely heard and understood should you start exploring options together. This approach takes longer initially, but it leads to better solutions and stronger buy-in because people feel like partners in the problem-solving process rather than targets of your persuasion efforts. Ask for advice to gain influence. When you want someone to like you more and trust your judgment, do the opposite of what seems logical. Instead of giving advice, ask for it. Your brain contains a fascinating quirk called the Benjamin Franklin effect. When someone helps you, even in small ways, their brain starts to justify why they helped. The conclusion it reaches is simple: they must like you. This happens because our minds hate inconsistency. If we help someone we don't like, it creates mental discomfort. So the brain rewrites the story. It decides we actually do like this person. That's why we helped them in the first place. The next time you want to build a relationship with a colleague, don't offer to help them with their project. Ask them to help with yours. When you want your boss to see you as leadership material, don't present solutions immediately. Ask what they think you should do. When you want a friend to feel closer to you, ask their opinion on a decision you're making. The key is making the request genuine and specific. Don't ask for advice about everything. Pick something they actually know about. When they give you guidance, follow through on it. Then report back on how it worked. This completes the psychological loop and makes the effect even stronger. Compliment behind their back. The most powerful compliments are the ones that travel. When you praise someone to a third party, that praise almost always finds its way back to the original person. But it arrives with much more impact than a direct compliment would have. This happens because of something called the third-party effect. When someone hears good things about themselves from others, they assume the praise is more genuine. After all, you had nothing to gain by saying nice things when they weren't around to hear it. The compliment seems more honest and objective. The key is being specific and genuine in your praise. Don't just say someone is nice or smart. Mention specific actions or qualities. Talk about how they handled a difficult situation well, or how their idea improved a project. Give concrete examples of their impact. Choose your messenger wisely. The person who delivers your compliment should be someone the target person trusts and respects. The praise carries more weight when it comes from a credible source. Also, make sure you're comfortable with the compliment getting back to the person, because it almost certainly will. This technique builds stronger relationships than direct praise because it demonstrates that you think positively about people, even when they're not around. It shows character and builds trust throughout your entire network. Use we instead of you. The word you can feel like an accusation, even when that's not your intention. It puts people on the defensive and creates separation between you and them. The word we does the opposite. It creates unity and shared responsibility. Instead of saying, you need to finish this project by Friday, try, we need to get this project finished by Friday. The second version implies that you're both invested in the outcome. It suggests teamwork rather than a demand from above. This works especially well when addressing problems. You made an error in this report. Sounds like blame. We have an error in this report that we need to fix. Sounds like problem solving. The person is more likely to focus on solutions rather than getting defensive about mistakes. The technique works in sales and persuasion too. You should consider this option. Feels like pressure. We should look at this option together. Feels like collaboration. People are more willing to consider ideas when they feel like partners in the decision-making process. Use we language when setting goals, solving problems, or making plans. Use you language when giving genuine compliments or recognizing individual achievements. The key is matching your language to whether you want to create unity or highlight individual contribution. Show your palm to gain trust. Instantly. Your hands communicate trustworthiness before you say a single word. When your palms are visible during conversation, people unconsciously perceive you as more honest and open. This happens because hiding the hands triggers an ancient survival instinct. For thousands of years, concealed hands meant potential weapons or threats. Politicians and successful business leaders understand this principle. They gesture with open palms when making important points. They keep their hands visible on podiums instead of gripping the sides. They avoid putting hands in pockets during crucial conversations. The effect works even in casual interactions. When you're explaining something important, gesture with your palms facing the other person. When you're making a request, keep your hands open and visible. When you're telling a story, use open palm gestures to emphasize key points. There's a specific technique that amplifies this effect. Hold your hands at waist level with palms slightly upward, as if you're offering something to the other person. This position suggests generosity and openness. It makes people more likely to agree with what you're saying and more willing to help you. Avoid pointing with your index finger, which feels aggressive. Don't cross your arms or put your hands behind your back, which creates distance. Don't fidget with objects in your hands, which suggests nervousness. Keep your movements deliberate and your palms visible. Look at their shoes to read their personality. The shoes someone wears reveal more about their personality than almost any other single item of clothing. This isn't just folk wisdom. Researchers have found that people can accurately judge personality traits just from looking at photographs of shoes. Expensive shoes usually belong to people who value status and appearance. They tend to be more conscientious about their image and often have higher incomes or aspirations for higher incomes. Well-maintained shoes suggest someone who pays attention to details and takes care of their possessions. These people are often reliable in other areas of life too. Colorful or unusual shoes typically belong to more extroverted personalities. These are people comfortable with standing out and expressing themselves. They're often more open to new experiences and willing to take social risks. Athletic shoes, in non-athletic settings, can suggest someone who values comfort over convention. They might be more practical and less concerned with social expectations. Brand new shoes often belong to people who either have disposable income or who care deeply about first impressions. Worn but clean shoes suggest someone practical who uses things until they wear out. Very worn or dirty shoes might indicate someone who's either going through a rough time or doesn't prioritize appearance. Use this information subtly. Don't stare at someone's feet during conversation, but a quick glance can give you valuable insights into how to approach them and what they might value in your interaction. The curiosity over judgment approach. When someone does something that seems wrong, stupid, or confusing, your brain immediately starts generating judgments and explanations. This automatic response often prevents you from understanding what actually happened or why they made that choice. A more effective approach is to get genuinely curious about their perspective before forming conclusions. Ask questions like, "Help me understand your thinking on this," or "What factors led you to that decision?" This curiosity-first approach often reveals information that changes your entire understanding of the situation. Maybe they had constraints you weren't aware of, or information you didn't have access to. or different priorities that made their choice logical from their perspective. Even when they genuinely made a mistake, approaching it with curiosity rather than judgment makes them more likely to explain what went wrong and work with you to prevent similar problems in the future. The attention residue management. When you switch from one task to another, part of your attention stays stuck on the previous task. This attention residue makes you less effective at the new task because your brain is still processing the unfinished business. You can minimize this effect by creating clear closure rituals between activities. Before moving to your next task, spend 2 minutes writing down where you left off on the current task, what you accomplished, and what needs to happen next. This mental download helps your brain release its grip on the previous work and engage fully with what comes next. The technique also works for conversations and meetings. Take a moment to summarize key points and next steps before transitioning to different topics. This closure process helps everyone shift their mental focus cleanly, instead of carrying incomplete thoughts into new discussions. The implementation, intention, formula, vague goals like, I should exercise more, rarely lead to behavior change because they don't specify when, where, or how the action will happen. Your brain needs concrete implementation details to turn intentions into automatic behaviors. The most effective format is, when X happens, I will do Y in location Z. For example, when I finish my morning coffee, I will do 10 push-ups in my living room, or when I feel frustrated during a meeting, I will take 3 deep breaths and count to 5 before responding. This if-then structure helps your brain recognize the trigger situation and automatically execute the planned response without requiring willpower, decision-making in the moment. The technique works for building positive habits and breaking negative ones because it creates clear, specific pathways between triggers and desired actions. Ask questions that make them reflect. Most conversations stay on the surface level. People talk about what happened, but not what it meant. When you ask deeper questions that require reflection, you create more meaningful connections and help people process their own experiences. Instead of asking, how was your weekend? Try, what was the best part of your weekend and why? Instead of, how was the meeting? Ask, what surprised you most about that meeting? These questions require the person to think more deeply about their experiences. The magic happens in that pause before they answer. Their brain has to process the experience from a different angle. They often discover insights about themselves or their situation that they hadn't considered before. This makes the conversation more valuable for them, which makes you more memorable. Good reflection questions often start with what rather than yes or no questions. What did you learn from that experience? What would you do differently next time? What part of that project excited you most? These questions invite storytelling and self-analysis. Be patient when you ask these questions. Give people time to think. The person will appreciate that you're interested in their deeper thoughts, not just surface-level updates. Self-deprecate. Then take the stage. Admitting a small weakness or flaw makes people trust you more and listen more carefully when you demonstrate strength. This works because it defies expectations. Most people try to look perfect all the time. When you acknowledge an imperfection, you seem more honest and relatable. The key is choosing the right weakness to admit. It should be something minor, and preferably something that doesn't affect your ability to help or lead in the current situation. A public speaker might admit to being nervous before taking command of the room. A teacher might mention they were terrible at the subject as a child before demonstrating their expertise. This technique disarms people's natural skepticism. When someone seems too perfect, we look for flaws. When they admit flaws up front, we stop searching and start listening. It's a form of honesty that makes everything else you say seem more credible. The self-deprecation must be brief and genuine. Don't dwell on your weaknesses or fish for reassurance. Make the admission quickly, then move confidently into demonstrating your strengths. The contrast between the vulnerability and the competence is what creates the powerful effect. This works especially well in leadership situations. Leaders who admit uncertainty about some things seem more trustworthy when they're confident about others. People follow leaders who seem human, not those who pretend to be perfect. Lower your voice to raise their respect. When you lower your voice, people automatically lean in and pay closer attention. This happens because quiet speech suggests confidence and importance. People who speak softly believe others will make the effort to listen. People who speak loudly often seem like they're fighting to be heard. Lowering your voice works especially well during important moments in conversation. When you're making a crucial point or sharing something personal, drop your volume slightly. The other person will instinctively focus more intently on what you're saying. This technique also works during conflicts or tense situations. When someone raises their voice, your natural instinct might be to match their volume. Instead, do the opposite. Speak more quietly than usual. This forces them to calm down if they want to hear your response. The key is lowering your voice just enough to be noticeable, but not so much that people strain to hear you. You want to create intimacy and focus, not frustration. Practice this in low-stakes conversations first to find the right volume level. Quiet speech suggests that what you're saying is valuable enough that people should work to hear it. It creates an atmosphere of importance and respect that loud speech can't achieve. Never break eye contact. While listening, maintaining steady eye contact while someone is speaking shows respect, interest, and focus that most people rarely receive in conversation. This creates a powerful sense of being heard and valued. Most people break eye contact frequently during conversation, especially while listening. They look at their phone, glance around the room, or let their attention wander. When you maintain steady, comfortable eye contact, you stand out dramatically. The key is making your eye contact feel natural and attentive, not intense or staring. Look at their eyes while they're talking, occasionally shifting your gaze briefly to their whole face, then returning to their eyes. This technique is especially powerful when someone is sharing something important or emotional. Your unwavering attention validates their experience and encourages them to be more open and honest. Practice this skill in low-stakes conversations first. Many people find sustained eye contact uncomfortable initially, but it becomes natural with practice. Your steady attention will make others feel more connected to you and more interested in what you have to say when it's your turn to speak. Use humor first, logic later. When people are resistant to an idea or feeling defensive, logic often makes them more entrenched in their position. Humor, on the other hand, can lower their defenses and make them more open to considering different perspectives. Start with light, appropriate humor that acknowledges the situation without making fun of anyone. Self-deprecating humor often works well because it shows you're not taking yourself too seriously. Once people smile or laugh, they're more receptive to serious discussion. Humor works because it creates positive emotions and reduces psychological threat. When people are laughing or smiling, their brains are more open to new information. They're less likely to see disagreement as attack and more likely to see it as interesting discussion. The humor must be genuinely funny and appropriate to the situation. Forced jokes or inappropriate humor can backfire and make situations worse. Pay attention to the other person's sense of humor and adapt accordingly. After the humor has done its work, transition naturally into more serious discussion. The positive emotions created by laughter will carry over and make people more willing to consider your logical arguments. Break tension with a whisper. When conversations become heated or tense, lowering your voice to almost a whisper can completely change the dynamic. This unexpected response forces everyone to calm down and listen more carefully. Whispering works because it's the opposite of what people expect during conflict. Most arguments escalate in volume, with each person speaking louder than the last. When you break this pattern by speaking very quietly, it disrupts the escalation cycle. The whisper must be genuine and calm, not dramatic or theatrical. You're not trying to manipulate the situation, but rather to create space for more thoughtful communication. Speak just loudly enough to be heard if they pay attention. This technique works especially well when you need to share something important during a tense moment. The whisper signals that what you're about to say is significant and worth careful attention. People lean in both physically and mentally. Use this sparingly and authentically. If you whisper constantly, it loses its power and becomes annoying. Reserve it for moments when you genuinely want to shift the conversation to a calmer, more intimate level. Ask for help like a teammate. The way you frame requests for help determines whether people see you as a colleague or a burden. Instead of positioning yourself as someone who needs rescue, position yourself as someone seeking collaboration from an equal. Instead of, "I'm really struggling with this and need help," try, "I'm working on this challenge and would value your input." Instead of, "Can you do this for me?" try, "Can we figure out the best approach to this together?" The language changes the relationship dynamic completely. This approach respects the other person's expertise while maintaining your own dignity. It suggests that you're asking for their help because you value their skills, not because you can't handle things yourself. Frame requests in terms of mutual benefit when possible. Show how helping you serves their interests too, or how the outcome will benefit both of you. This makes the request feel like a collaboration rather than a favor. Thank people for their expertise and insights, not just for their time. This reinforces that you see them as knowledgeable partners rather than just people who do things for you. Plant ideas. Instead of asking questions, direct questions can feel like interrogation or pressure. When you plant ideas instead, people feel like they're discovering insights on their own. This makes them more likely to accept and act on those ideas because they feel like co-creators rather than passive recipients. Instead of asking, "Do you think we should try a different approach?" you might say, "I've been wondering if there might be other ways to handle this situation." The second approach introduces the idea without putting the person on the spot to give an immediate answer. This technique works because it respects people's autonomy. Nobody likes feeling pushed or cornered into making decisions. When you plant ideas, you give people space to consider options without pressure. They can think about the idea privately and come back to it when they're ready. The key is using tentative language that suggests possibility rather than certainty. Phrases like, "I wonder if," "Maybe we could," "It might be worth considering," and "One possibility could be" all plant ideas without creating pressure. This approach works especially well with resistant or defensive personalities. People who push back against direct suggestions are often more open to ideas that feel like discoveries rather than instructions. They need to feel like they have choice and control in the decision-making process. Plant multiple ideas over time, rather than overwhelming someone with too many options at once. Let each idea settle before introducing the next one. This gives people time to process and makes them feel like partners in creative problem-solving. NG, your message much more persuasive. Use their words in your reply. When people hear their own words reflected back to them, something powerful happens in their brain. They feel heard and understood in a way that goes deeper than normal conversation. This technique builds rapport quickly and makes people more willing to open up to you. The key is not just repeating what they said word for word, but incorporating their specific language into your response. If someone says they're swamped with work, use that exact word when you respond. If they describe something as amazing, use amazing rather than great or wonderful. This works because everyone has their own unique way of expressing themselves. The words they choose reveal how they think about and experience the world. When you use their language, you're speaking in a way that resonates with their mental model of reality. Pay attention to the specific adjectives, metaphors, and expressions people use. Someone who talks about building relationships thinks differently than someone who talks about growing relationships. Someone who describes challenges as obstacles approaches problems differently than someone who calls them opportunities. This technique is especially powerful in emotional conversations. When someone is upset and says they feel overwhelmed, acknowledge that they feel overwhelmed rather than saying they seem stressed. The specific word choice matters because it reflects their internal experience. Use this subtly and naturally. Don't force their words into every sentence, or it will sound artificial. Choose key moments when using their exact language will create the strongest connection and show that you truly understand their perspective. Thank them for the thought, not the action. When someone does something nice for you, thanking them for their thoughtfulness or consideration creates more positive feelings than thanking them for the specific action. This approach recognizes their character rather than just their behavior. Instead of, "Thanks for bringing coffee," try, "Thanks for thinking of me." Instead of, "Thanks for staying late to help," try, "I really appreciate how considerate you are." This shifts focus from what they did to who they are. This type of gratitude makes people feel valued as individuals rather than just appreciated for their usefulness. It suggests that you see their good intentions and care about them as a person, not just as someone who does things for you. Character-based thanks also encourages more helpful behavior in the future. When you reinforce someone's identity as a thoughtful person, they're more likely to act thoughtfully again, to remain consistent with that identity. Be specific about the character trait you're acknowledging. Instead of just saying they're nice, mention that they're thoughtful, generous, reliable, or considerate. This helps them see positive aspects of themselves they might not have noticed. The availability heuristic. People judge the likelihood or importance of something based on how easily they can remember examples of it. This availability heuristic explains why people overestimate the danger of dramatic but rare events, while underestimating the danger of common but boring risks. You can use this principle by making your examples vivid and memorable. When explaining why something is important, tell specific stories rather than citing abstract statistics. People remember and are influenced more by concrete examples than by general data. The technique works in reverse too. If you want people to worry less about something, don't give them vivid examples of worst-case scenarios. Instead, help them remember times when things worked out fine or when the feared outcome didn't happen. Recent examples influence people more than older ones, and personal examples influence people more than examples about strangers. Mirror their breathing to calm them. When someone is upset or agitated, their breathing becomes shallow and rapid. You can help calm them down by subtly matching their breathing pattern first, then gradually slowing your own breathing. Most people will unconsciously follow your lead. This works because breathing patterns are contagious. When we're around calm people, we tend to breathe more slowly. When we're around anxious people, our breathing often speeds up. You can use this natural tendency to influence someone's emotional state. Start by observing their breathing rhythm without making it obvious. Then breathe at the same pace for a minute or two. Once you've established synchronization, gradually slow your breathing down. Keep your breathing deep and steady. This technique is especially effective during tense conversations or when someone is sharing something emotionally difficult. Your calm breathing pattern provides a subtle anchor that helps stabilize their emotional state. The key is being subtle about this mirroring. Don't make it obvious that you're watching their breathing or trying to influence them. Let it happen naturally while you focus on listening to what they're saying. Mention a mutual interest. Finding genuine common ground creates instant connection and rapport. When you discover shared interests, experiences, or values, the relationship shifts from polite interaction to real connection. Listen carefully for clues about the other person's interests, hobbies, background, or experiences. When you find something you genuinely share, bring it up naturally in conversation. Don't force connections that aren't really there. Mutual interests work as conversational bridges. They give you safe topics to discuss and help you understand each other's perspectives. Someone who shares your love of hiking probably values outdoor experiences and physical challenge. The connection becomes stronger when the shared interest is somewhat uncommon. Everyone likes good food, but fewer people are passionate about rock climbing or vintage cars. Unusual shared interests create a sense of finding a kindred spirit, Use mutual interests as starting points for deeper conversations. Don't just mention that you both like reading. Discuss what kinds of books you enjoy and why. The shared interest opens the door to understanding each other's deeper values and perspectives. Pretend you are the host. When you act like the host in any situation, people automatically treat you with more respect and authority. Hosts take care of others, make introductions, and guide conversations. When you adopt this mindset, others fall into the guest role naturally. This works in meetings, social gatherings, and even casual conversations. Ask if people need anything, make sure everyone is included, facilitate introductions between people who don't know each other. Take responsibility for the comfort and experience of others. The host mindset changes your own behavior in positive ways. You become more attentive to others' needs, more proactive about solving problems, and more focused on creating positive experiences. These behaviors naturally increase your influence and likability. You don't need official authority to act like a host. Anyone can ask if others need drinks, suggest ways to make meetings more productive, or help people feel welcome in new situations. Leadership often starts with simply acting like a leader. This technique is especially powerful in group situations where no clear leader has emerged. By taking the host role, you naturally become the person others look to for guidance and direction. Open gestures to invite openness. Your body language influences not just how others perceive you, but how they behave toward you. When you use open, welcoming gestures, people are more likely to be open and honest in return. Keep your arms uncrossed and your hands visible. Turn your body toward the person you're talking with. Maintain an upright but relaxed posture. These signals suggest that you're receptive and non-threatening. Open gestures work especially well when you want someone to share information or feelings with you. Your body language gives them permission to be vulnerable by showing that you're approachable and trustworthy. Mirror the other person's openness level gradually. If they're sitting back with crossed arms, don't immediately lean forward with wide-open gestures. Start where they are, then slowly become more open as they become more comfortable. Practice these gestures until they feel natural. Forced body language looks artificial and can create the opposite effect. Your open posture should reflect a genuinely open mindset, not just be a manipulation technique. Act like you. Forgot they are famous. When dealing with high-status people, celebrities, or authority figures, treating them like normal human beings often creates better connections than obvious starstruck behavior. Most high-status people are used to special treatment and find genuine normal interaction refreshing. This doesn't mean being disrespectful or ignoring their accomplishments. It means interacting with them as a person rather than as a symbol or celebrity. Ask about their interests, opinions, and experiences rather than just gushing about their fame. High-status people often feel isolated because others treat them differently. When you interact normally, you provide something rare and valuable, authentic human connection. This makes you more memorable and likable than people who fawn over them. The key is confident normalcy, not artificial casualness. Don't pretend you don't know who they are, but don't let their status prevent you from having a real conversation. Treat their expertise with respect while treating them as an equal human being. This approach works with bosses, experts, and other authority figures too. Respectful normalcy often creates better relationships than excessive deference or obvious nervousness. Be the first to apologize in conflict. Taking responsibility first, even for small parts of a conflict, often diffuses tension and encourages the other person to take responsibility too. This happens because apologies reduce defensiveness and create space for honest conversation. You don't have to apologize for things you didn't do or take blame for the entire situation. Apologize for your contribution to the problem, your part in any misunderstanding, or your reaction to their behavior. Early apologies prevent conflicts from escalating. When someone is angry or upset, they're often looking for acknowledgement that their feelings are valid. A genuine apology provides that acknowledgement and allows them to move from defensiveness to problem solving. The key is making your apology specific and genuine. Don't just say, "I'm sorry you're upset." Say, "I'm sorry I didn't explain my thinking clearly," or "I'm sorry my tone came across as dismissive." Specific apologies show that you understand what went wrong. This technique requires setting ego aside for the sake of relationship and resolution. Being first to apologize doesn't mean you were wrong about everything. It means you value the relationship more than being right about everything. Break the script to control the moment. Everyone has mental scripts for common interactions, greeting co-workers, ordering food, making small talk. When you break these scripts in unexpected but positive ways, you immediately grab attention and control the direction of the conversation. Instead of asking, "How are you?" try, "What's the best thing that happened to you today?" Instead of standard business introductions, share something interesting about your background. Instead of predictable responses, give answers that make people think differently about the situation. Breaking the script works because it disrupts automatic thinking patterns. When people encounter something unexpected, their brain switches from autopilot to active processing. This makes them more engaged and more likely to remember you. The key is breaking scripts in ways that create positive surprise, not confusion or discomfort. Your unexpected response should still be appropriate to the situation. You want to be memorably different, not awkwardly weird. This technique is especially powerful in networking situations where everyone is having the same boring conversations. A script-breaking question or comment can transform a forgettable interaction into a meaningful connection. Use the power of because. Adding the word because to your requests dramatically increases the chances that people will comply. This happens even when the reason you give isn't particularly compelling. The word because triggers an automatic response in most people's minds. Harvard researcher Ellen Langer discovered this in a famous copying machine experiment. When people asked to cut in line at the copy machine, 60% agreed when they just asked. But when they added, "Because I need to make copies," 93% agreed, even though needing to make copies was obvious and not really a reason. The word because satisfies our brain's need for causation. We want to understand why things happen and why people make requests. Even weak reasons feel better than no reasons at all. The brain can file the request away as logical rather than random or pushy. This works in all kinds of situations. "Could you send me that report because I need to review it before the meeting?" works better than just, "Could you send me that report? We should leave early because traffic might be heavy," is more persuasive than "We should leave early." Make your reasons genuine when possible, but don't overthink this technique. Even simple or obvious reasons work better than no reasons. The word because is doing most of the psychological work by itself. Give the gift first. The reciprocity principle becomes much stronger when you give something before asking for anything in return. When you lead with generosity, people feel obligated to reciprocate even when you haven't made any specific requests. The gift doesn't have to be expensive or material. Share useful information, make a helpful introduction, offer genuine compliments, or provide your time and attention. Small gifts often create more reciprocal feeling than large ones because they seem more thoughtful and personal. Timing matters with this approach. Give first, then wait before making any requests. Let the person process and appreciate your generosity before asking for anything. This makes your eventual request feel separate from your gift rather than like a transaction. This technique works especially well for building long-term relationships. When you consistently give value to people without immediate expectations, you build a bank of goodwill that makes future requests much more likely to succeed. Be genuine about your generosity. Don't give fake gifts just to create obligation. Real generosity creates real, reciprocal feelings, while manipulative gifts create resentment when people figure out your motives. Sit diagonally, not head-on. Your seating position sends powerful signals about your intentions and relationship with others. Sitting directly across from someone can feel confrontational or adversarial. Sitting diagonally creates a sense of collaboration and openness. The diagonal position allows for comfortable eye contact without the intensity of direct opposition. It suggests that you're on the same side, working toward common goals rather than opponents facing off against each other. This positioning works especially well during negotiations, difficult conversations, or when you're trying to build rapport with someone new. It reduces psychological pressure and makes people feel more comfortable sharing information. In restaurants, choose seats that let you sit at a 90-degree angle rather than directly across from each other. In offices, position chairs slightly angled rather than facing straight on. The subtle change in positioning creates a significant change in the conversation dynamic. Pay attention to how different seating arrangements affect your own feelings during conversations. You'll notice that diagonal positioning feels more collaborative and less threatening than head-to-head positioning. The authority principle. People automatically defer to authority figures, even when those authorities are not actually experts in the relevant area. You can increase your influence by establishing appropriate authority through expertise, credentials, or track record. The key is demonstrating relevant authority rather than just claiming it. Share your experience with similar problems, mention relevant training or education, or cite your track record with related challenges. Let others introduce your credentials when possible, rather than listing them yourself. Authority doesn't have to be formal or official. You can establish authority through demonstrated knowledge, thoughtful questions, or insights that others haven't considered. People recognize expertise when they see it, even without titles or degrees. Use authority responsibly by staying within your actual areas of expertise. Don't claim authority you don't have, and be clear about the limits of your knowledge. Real authority builds trust, while false authority destroys credibility. This principle works in reverse too. When you're dealing with legitimate authorities, acknowledge their expertise appropriately. People with real authority respond well to recognition of their knowledge and experience. Use silence to own space. Most people are uncomfortable with silence and rush to fill quiet moments with words. When you become comfortable with silence, you gain a powerful advantage in conversations. Silence makes you seem more thoughtful, confident, and in control. After you ask someone a question, resist the urge to add more words or rephrase the question. Let the silence do its work. Most people will feel compelled to fill the quiet space with a response, often revealing more than they intended to share. Silence also gives you time to think before responding. Instead of immediately jumping into your reply, pause for a moment. This makes your eventual response seem more considered and deliberate. It shows that you're processing what they said, rather than just waiting for your turn to talk. The technique works especially well in negotiations and difficult conversations. When someone makes an unreasonable request or says something problematic, don't rush to respond. Let the silence hang in the air. They'll often backtrack or modify their position without you saying anything. Practice becoming comfortable with quiet moments. Count to 3 before responding to questions. Let natural pauses happen without filling them. Your comfort with silence will make others see you as more authoritative and self-assured. Speak to pain, not logic. People make decisions based on emotions, then use logic to justify those decisions afterward. If you want to influence someone, address their emotional needs first. Logic alone rarely changes minds, but emotions combined with logic can be unstoppable. Every person carries pain points, problems, frustrations, fears, or desires that create emotional discomfort. When you identify and speak to these pain points, you capture their attention immediately. The person stops thinking about other things and focuses completely on what you're saying. This doesn't mean being manipulative or exploiting genuine suffering. It means understanding what really matters to someone and addressing those concerns directly. If someone is afraid of being left behind by technology, speak to that fear before explaining the logical benefits of learning new skills. The technique works in reverse too. People avoid pain more than they seek pleasure. Instead of only talking about the benefits of your idea, mention the problems that happen without it. Instead of just describing how good something will be, describe how bad things might get if they don't act. Listen carefully to the language people use. They'll tell you their pain points if you pay attention. Someone who says, "I'm always so busy," is in pain about time management. Someone who says, "Nobody listens to my ideas," is in pain about being heard and valued. Address the emotional need first, then provide the logical solution. This combination satisfies both the heart and the head, making your message much more persuasive.